All right, people. So Deltarune's right around the corner. We got chapters 3 and 4 releasing on June 5th, a day after someone's birthday. And I might have that person here with us right now.
Really?
Why don't they say hello, Mr.
Hello?
Mr. Luke?
Hello.
So Luke here, you're a Deltarune player, right?
I'd say so.
But you sort of have an interesting sort of perspective.
Yeah,
Because tell me what happened in between chapters 1 and 2. What did you do for
I fell off.
You fell off.
I played Deltarune chapter 1 like the day it dropped. I remember playing that, and like Undertale is like one of my favorite games of all time. I grinded Deltarune chapter 1 and I was like, wow, that was amazing. And I never touched it again. I never played chapter 2 until I want to say a few months back.
Yeah, I would say maybe like
Right?
January, right? Or something?
Yeah, January, February, I played it.
Yeah.
So I waited, let's see, what, 5-6 years in between?
Something like that. Some crazy amount. Maybe like 4 years, but
Yeah.
yeah, so Luke has no sort of context on Deltarune theories or the community or what's been going on in between. So since, Deltarune's right around the corner and it's going to be the start of a new era, we're going to be getting rid of all these old theories essentially, and we're going to be getting a ton of new ones. So why don't we have this Deltarune newbie, quote unquote, sort of rank these theories for the first time?
Yeah, I'm down.
And we'll truly see how brain rotted we are, because Luke will be sort of like a guideline for that. Because if something that we believe is just completely out there for Luke, that means we've been brain rotted.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm in.
All right. So Luke, let me present to you the items that we have on the tier list. Here we go.
Ooh, we got a bunch of them here. Okay.
Anything that stands out to you so far?
Yeah, naked Ralsei. What is that?
We'll get to that. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, some of these are already brain rotted just on the title alone. So
Woody?
Woody?
What's going on there?
we'll get to that. We will get to that. All right, so we're gonna start off with T Theory. This is one of my personal favorites.
Okay.
But let me give you a little explanation. This is made by Fenric, so thank you for that. So you know about the character T in chapter 2, right?
Yeah.
So each T is named after each party member that you can get, and it heals a different amount of HP depending on who drinks the tea.
Okay.
And usually when someone drinks the tea, they usually have some sort of comment about it. So the basis of this theory is that the amount healed is representative of how the character that drank the tea feels about the character that the tea is made out of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the higher amount healed, the more that character likes that person. Yeah, so the big takeaway from T Theory that we get sort of more information about is that now we sort of know how our silent protagonist Kris feels about each party member. And the one that stands out the most in T Theory is that when Kris drinks Ralsei tea, they only heal 60 HP, the lowest amount of someone else drinking another person's tea who they have a relationship with. So it sort of implies that Kris doesn't really like Ralsei a lot when compared to like Noelle and Susie, which is interesting since Susie sort of has the same amount of time of knowing Kris. Susie is like the highest that Kris heals when they drink Susie tea.
That is interesting.
And most recently, we also got a tweet from Toby Fox saying that the tea items will not transfer to future chapters and will instead become rotten tea. So maybe this implies
Kris is hating everyone.
well, no, this will go rotten tea for like every single tea that you get. Like the item itself will become rotten tea. So people think that maybe this implies that we'll get more party members in the future, or perhaps that the relationships with each character will change. And so it would obviously be too much of a hassle to change the amount healed.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think that's
canon? That makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like that also fits really well into a lot of the other mechanics and the way that the game kind of flows with a lot of stuff. Honestly, I feel like if that isn't the case, I'm gonna be more surprised, especially, and Ralsei being all the way at the bottom makes a lot of sense because Ralsei's kind of sus.
And Ralsei does look like Asriel.
Yeah.
So
no,
Kris might feel a little uncomfortable about that.
That is all the way up.
All right.
Starting off strong.
Cool. And I think of these first 5 theories, T Theory included, is sort of a good gauge of each tier that we have.
Yeah, because I'm seeing gas leak over there, and that's the only one. I've heard like parts of that theory and it sounds insane, so.
Actually, this will be a good time to me introduce each of the tiers. Obviously, we have canon, which obviously, basically this theory might as well just be canon at this point. High possibility is pretty obvious. High possibility being right. Some possibility, like a so-so 50-50. Low possibility, of course, means, there's some chance, but not a lot. And then never had a chance means this is just fabrication. This might as well just be a fan fiction. This is not going to be real. All right, so with that, moving on, we got naked Ralsei theory.
Yeah,
Remember when Ralsei removed his hat at the end of chapter 1, right?
Yeah.
Well, what if Ralsei removed a piece of clothing for each chapter? We already have Ralsei.
What? No.
Wait. We already have Ralsei removing the glasses by Susie in chapter 2 when you come back from entering the queen's basement. So maybe it's foreshadowing a pattern. Very recently as well, Toby Fox posted a tweet showing us early sketch designs of Ralsei, Susie, and Noelle. And in those sketches, Ralsei doesn't wear glasses and also has a different symbol on his robe. All this points to Ralsei continuing the trend of removing each piece of clothing per chapter.
I don't like this theory. Like, what's the end goal here? I like, okay, that happens. Like, what significance does it have, like, with Ralsei removing, like, clothing?
It represents a character arc. He's opening up more and more.
I'm gonna put that in low possibility. Okay. Never had a chance, just because I feel like the only reason why is I could see, like, coincidentally, like, another piece of clothing, like, randomly gets removed in a situation and people are gonna go crazy. That's why I don't want to say never had a chance. We're talking pretty low possibility, I'm thinking here. I don't like that theory.
You know what? Fair enough.
Yeah.
So the next one, we have the second voice theory, specifically that Chara from Undertale is the second voice. So during the Goner Maker sequence at the start of the game, the sequence seems to be interrupted by someone. The font and the speech pattern is different from the person guiding us through the sequence in the first half. This person that sort of interrupts says, "No one can choose who they are in this world. Your name is," before getting cut off by Toriel calling Kris's name. People have also found out that in the Japanese version of Deltarune, this text is spoken in kanji hiragana and uses the second person pronoun omae. This type of speech is informal and can come across as rude in the Japanese language. This way of speaking Japanese is also very similar to how Chara spoke in Undertale. So what if Chara is the second voice in that Goner Maker sequence that interrupts the first half?
High possibility.
Really?
Well, and I remember saying, while I was playing through chapter 1 and chapter 2, like, I was like, there's a lot of stuff here that, like, just made me very reminiscent of Chara. And I think Chara's gonna have, like, a role in this game. And I think Chara being the second voice would make a lot of sense compared to how we have Kris and Chara, like the duality sort of thing. I'm definitely thinking Chara.
Another thing that sort of goes in, I don't know if this will affect how you view it or not, but another thing that goes into this theory is that people think that after the genocide route of Undertale, Chara says, like, we'll go on to the next one.
Deltarune is the next one?
Yeah, people think that Deltarune's
like
the next
I mean, I think
world.
that makes a lot of sense. I like this theory a lot. Why? So you seem a little shocked that I have that up there.
Yeah, no, because, like...
Do you not agree?
Well, we'll get into, like, my opinions after we sort of wrapped up, because I've also done this for my own.
Yeah.
So we'll sort of compare and contrast.
I want to see that.
One.
I mean, I'd want to hear what, like, the doubters say.
The doubters?
You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, I'm only hearing, like, what the theory itself is, and, like, that to me makes sense. And from playing the game, like, there's a lot of imagery, like, with Kris that, like, seems like it's almost identical to Chara. Maybe if someone, like, who's had more time to dwell on this theory says something that, like, completely goes against it, then it could change my viewpoint, But I mean, I don't know. From what I'm hearing here, yeah, I like that one. I could definitely see that being a thing.
For every time I explain these theories, just for the people in the audience and for you, Luke, I am, like, trying to be on the side of these theories, so I'm not gonna present any, like, contradicting evidence or anything.
Maybe at the end, once, like, I hear contradicting evidence, mine will change a little bit or something. I don't know, but I'm liking this.
I just want your raw thoughts.
Yeah. So. No, I know. High possibility.
Okay, so next one. Sans is not from Undertale and actually comes from Deltarune. This is a theory by Dorked.
We talked about this one, I remember.
Yeah, a little bit, but everyone in Deltarune that was originally from Undertale has a different appearance and or personality. exactly. However, the only character from Undertale that's in Deltarune who is the exact same is Sans. Sans also has some interesting scenes and dialogue that hint at him coming from somewhere that isn't the underground in Undertale. In the Mettaton Resort hotel scene with Sans, he says, "Your journey's almost over, huh? You must really want to go home. Hey, I know the feeling, Bodo." In the fight against Sans, he also says, "Look, I gave up on trying to go back a long time ago," which is followed by, "And getting to the surface doesn't really appeal anymore," which indicates a different place other than the underground and the surface Sans wants to go back to. And in Sans' hidden laboratory, there's a photo album of people Frisk doesn't recognize. And in the Switch version of the game, getting the Clam Girl fun event, hinting at Susie from Deltarune, the photo album now says that there is a drawing of 3 people smiling with text written on it saying, "Don't forget," which clearly references the title of Deltarune's main theme, Don't Forget. Perhaps these 3 people on the drawing could be the 3 party members in Deltarune. Sans and Papyrus are also described in Undertale to have just appeared one day, and in Sans' room in Undertale, there's the same visual effect as the teleporting doors in the Dark World in Deltarune. When you enter his room in Undertale, you sort of walk endlessly in this darkness, similarly to how Kris and Susie walk into the supply closet in Deltarune. The only appearance of Icy in Undertale is Sans' Ice-E Kids word puzzle, which is weird considering how Icy is more prevalent within Deltarune's hometown. Maybe this is why Sans got that kid puzzle was from Deltarune's world. Lastly, in the official Papyrus interview, when asked about life before Snowdin, Papyrus says, well, there was green grass and then he gets cut off by Sans. Hometown obviously is a place that would have green grass, unlike the underground. This all implies that Sans likely originated from Deltarune's world before getting transported into the world of Undertale. Perhaps that machine in the hidden lab was the way he was able to be transported.
Yeah, no, I love that theory. I want to put that in high possibility.
Okay.
I really like that. I think that there's so much weight behind that. Everything that Toby Fox puts into Undertale and Deltarune, for the most part, a lot of those like small details like that do end up meaning something. The part that like really like sticks out to me in that one is how every character in Deltarune that was in Undertale is vastly different, except for Sans, who is the same. I really like that theory, and I definitely could see that being a thing. So yeah, I'm gonna say high possibility.
Do you think it's above impossibility or below the second voice?
I feel like there's more credibility behind that one. Like there's more evidence over the second voice. I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, and like you could probably put them next to each other on that.
Okay,
like they're kind of
slightly
interchangeable.
more.
Yeah, we'll say slightly more.
Just because more evidence.
Yeah, because there's like more evidence that proves that, unless he came from the Earthbound world, and, Sans' Ness.
People have sort of branched theories off of this, saying that like maybe Papyrus is different from Undertale Papyrus, and that Sans was the only one that sort of transported, because we haven't actually seen Papyrus in Deltarune.
I know, and that was another thing too. Yeah, like Papyrus not being there. There's a lot of weird stuff with Sans. I almost would kind of like it if like never gets answered, because I just feel like Sans being a mysterious entity and us not really ever getting any type of explanation for it, like really would fit in with his character and his like his aura, if you will.
His aura.
You know what I mean? Like I just think that'd be kind of cool if we really don't know, and like the Deltarune ends, and I think we'll probably get an answer, but like if we don't, I'll be pretty happy. I just think that would be really cool, and like we still have things left open at the end of it.
Yeah, I get you.
I think that'd be cool.
All right, next one. We got this one. I think this is one of the few theories that you actually know about.
I do know about this one.
Here we go. So let me make my case. All right, gas leak theory. This is by D33 Pissed.
Okay.
So Toby Fox has been known to place various red herrings in Deltarune, and has been known to troll his audience many times before.
That's true.
We see this clearly at the end of Chapter 1 of Deltarune. Kris pulling out the knife and removing their soul was a big red herring for them actually just eating the pie at the night. So, what if the same is true for Chapter 2's ending? Maybe Kris didn't actually create a dark fountain. We know from the Queen that in order to create a dark fountain, you need determination. However, Kris removes their soul before before opening up this fountain. But we know from Undertale that the soul should contain a being's determination, so Kris wouldn't have had any determination to be able to open up the dark fountain without a soul. Perhaps all these effects and smoke that are created at the end of chapter 2 is actually just a reaction from Kris striking at a gas pipe underneath the floorboards of their house.
I feel like this is kind of weird. I'm gonna put it in some possibility.
Whoa, that's really high.
Hold on.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going to put it in some possibility is because I like a lot of things from that theory, but I don't agree with the ending at all. I could really see them saying gas leak as like the red herring. So like people will be talking about like, oh my God, there was a gas leak at Kris's house and whatever. But like they use that to cover up what really happened. Like I think that, you know, the fountain opens and they do all that. Like I think that 100% is going to happen. And Toriel will say there was a gas leak in the house. Like they'll try to use that to explain what happened, but no one really knows what actually happened, being the fountain opening up.
Yeah, like you think a fountain actually did open.
100%. Yeah, like a fountain for sure opened and all that, but I think it's going to be explained away as a gas leak to everyone else who is not aware of the dark world and all that, you know?
Okay, I like that interpretation. That's something new. I haven't heard that. So.
No, yeah, that's what I think it's going to be.
Okay, so next one, we have the mayor holiday theory. This is by No Chocolate. So Noelle's mother and the mayor of Deltarune are two characters that we haven't seen so far, but instead of them being two separate characters, it's likely that they are the exact same character. The mayor is described many times to be a very busy person, and Noelle, when locked out of her own house, doesn't want to bother her when she's working. It would make a lot of sense that Noelle's mom has an important job in town, like the mayor, that keeps her busy and makes Noelle not want to bother her. This would also explain why Noelle seems to live in a big house, having a big gate that blocks the way. A high position job like a mayor would help pay for this house and warrant a big protected gate. The mayor is also described to be very cold personality-wise and appears to enjoy the freezing cold as well. Politics Bear says that the mayor puts the AC on full blast. The holiday family is based on reindeers and Christmas, so enjoying the snow and ice would fit a lot. Not to mention the mayor has a pine tree in the waiting area of Town Hall. Also, in Asgore's flower shop, there is a note stating that Asgore hasn't sent in his rent yet, saying he only has 1 month left before eviction, signed by someone with their name starting with the letter C. This is likely a note that the mayor sent to Asgore, and if we believe that the mayor is Noelle's mom, then she has to have a Christmas theme named like every other member of the family, and there's a clear name that sticks out starting with the letter C, being Carol, like Christmas carols. Lastly, when talking to the Wet-Nosed Bandits in their cell in chapter 2, they said that they were trying to rob the holiday house when they saw something merciless. The only person who this could be is Noelle's mother, and the description of mercilessness fits the description of the mayor's icy and hardworking personality. Thus, the mayor of Deltarune is Carol Holiday, the mother of Noelle and wife of Rudy.
So I think that the C in Carol actually stands for canon, because I'm gonna be more surprised if the mayor is not Noelle's mom.
Yeah, no, an interesting thing about this theory is that most people don't even realize it's a theory. They thought that this was already fact.
I don't even, I kind of feel that same way. I honestly think too, the only reason that we didn't know about this already in chapter 2 is because the mayor is going to become a big part of it. Toby is pushing the mayor to like maybe chapter 3 being Noelle's mom, just because wants to focus on Noelle for chapter 2. I'm willing to bet a lot of money that's going to be a thing.
All right, so I assume that's more canon than
I'd say.
So, this one. These next two sort of correlate with each other.
I see that.
They are also the most controversial theories in the community. So let me just give you the rundown of these theories. So first off, we have Kris is the Roaring Knight. So, Kris opens a dark fountain at the end of chapter 2, even after the warning about the roaring from Ralsei. Thus, Kris has to be the knight we've been hearing about so much that wants to cause the Roaring Knight. Kris seemed to have planned the chapter 3 Dark World ahead of time, because in chapter 1, the TV is not plugged in, and in chapter 2, the TV is plugged in. Kris, after removing their soul in chapter 1, went and plugged in the TV for the future Dark World for chapter 3. Kris also, in this time, would go to the library and open up the Cyberworld Dark Fountain in the same night along with eating the pie. This explains why they sleep during the class the next day, and they were up all night opening the Dark Fountain. And when Queen describes the Knight with her holograms, she shows a human-like hand stabbing a knife into the ground, which is exactly what Kris does at the end of chapter 2. Kris also has a save file in the supply closet Dark World before we actually save and overwrite it, which means that Kris was in the supply closet Dark World before Susie and Kris entered it in chapter 1, likely because Kris is the one that created the Dark World, and Kris wears knight armor in each of these Dark Worlds. It would make sense that people would give them the name of the Knight. The conclusion is that Kris is the Roaring Knight, and that we, the players, have been chasing around the entire game and will tie into this player versus player character narrative that Toby wants to tell.
Yeah, I like that theory, and I also, as the channel knows here, if you've seen the previous videos with me, when Deltarune chapter 2 ended, I literally yelled out, I was like, Kris is the Knight, you know? And like, it feels like the Deltarune is going that direction. It makes a lot of sense. However, they're misleading us, making us think that Kris is the Knight, when really Kris isn't the Knight. It's like, okay, like there's a lot of evidence here to support Kris is probably the Knight, you know, the Knight armor and opening the fountain at the end of chapter 2. But what if, like, you know, we're thinking that, and then they reveal who the Knight is, and it's like it's a big plot twist, and Kris isn't the Knight, and all that stuff is like explained away by something else, you know? And I've thought of that we're being misled. So this one's kind of tough because I'm stuck in between some possibility and high possibility. Because I feel like where we are currently at, it feels like the game is trying to tell us that Kris is the Knight, and there's a lot of evidence supporting that, but I also feel like it's a little too obvious for me. Like, actually, the way I look at this right now is like how in Gravity Falls, when Gravity Falls was coming out, everyone thought the author of the journals was Old Man Old Man McGuckin. But then like it was just like so unbelievably obvious it was, but then like you find out it's not him at all. It's Stan's brother. Spoilers for, I feel like that's, everyone knows that now, so it's not really
I'll put a little spoiler warning for it.
We find out, like, you know, Susie is the Knight or something like that, you know? Which, like, I'm not saying Susie's the Knight. I'm just saying, like, we're led to believe Kris is, and then, like, the plot twist happens, and it's like, oh my god, it was Susie all along, you know?
Yeah, like a different character.
Yeah, like a different character that isn't Kris. But if we're judging on just the theory and just the evidence presented, I'm leaning toward high possibility.
Okay, low, high possibility maybe?
A low to high. Yeah, like, it'll be all the way at the bottom of high possibility. The top is some possibility, just because I have a lot of doubt.
All right, maybe the next theory will sort of shift where you put the position.
I can move it after, like, I'm not locked in here all the way.
Yeah, if you want to move it at any time, just let me know.
I remember, like, briefly talking to you about it, and you were saying how, like, hot button issue in the Deltarune community on if Kris is the Knight or not.
Yeah, no, this is like, basically like,
this is like the
war that's happening.
Yeah.
You swear your allegiance, and the two sort of fight against each other.
Yeah, that I remember. I think that's really funny. I kind of love that.
All right,
let's see the evidence on Kris is not the Knight.
Okay, so Kris isn't the Roaring Knight.
Or wait, I'll be neutral and put them both in some possibility.
All right, but here we go. So Kris did open a dark fountain at the end of chapter 2, but that doesn't mean that they are the same person as the Roaring Knight that we've been told about. From a narrative standpoint, why would we be told and shown that any lightener, either being a human or a monster, can create a dark fountain if Kris is supposed to be the one and only Knight? Wouldn't telling us that only humans can create a dark fountain be better narratively and lead to less confusion? And wouldn't revealing your mystery villain plot at the second chapter kind of defeat the purpose of setting up this mystery in the first place?
Yeah.
In a newsletter by Toby Fox, he says that chapter 3 will be different from other chapters. Wouldn't it make sense that chapter 3 would be fundamentally different because it was created by someone other than the Knight, being Kris? Also, if Kris supposedly went to the library in the night without their soul, wouldn't they have to have broken into the library because it would have been locked at night? However, there are no signs of a break-in throughout chapter 2, and the police don't seem to mention anything about a break-in, or even try to lock down the library for investigation. Not to mention, Kris's movement without their soul is slow and staggered, so why would they want to go all the way down to the library and not a place close by, like, for example, their house? Queen also says that the Knight created the Cyber Dark World fountain today. However, we control Kris during the entire day of chapter 2.
Yeah, and Kris does not make any fountains in chapter 2 there, really, until the end.
And also, Ralsei, when he shows up in the Cyber World Dark Fountain, says that he just noticed a dark presence and hurried over, implying that the fountain had just been created right before Susie and Kris entered the computer lab. The title, Roaring Knight, is also told to us by the Queen. However, the Queen doesn't know about the roaring, which tells us that the Knight told her about the name Roaring Knight. Kris would have no way of knowing about the roaring before learning about it from Ralsei.
And wouldn't also, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
no,
like,
you're good.
wouldn't the Queen also have, like, the Queen saw Kris, wouldn't at least have some sort of recognition that that is the Knight?
That is a point. That's
you know
true.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like she would, like, immediately have some sort of suspicion, and that clearly doesn't ever happen once, so.
Yeah, that is a point that people bring up.
People do bring that up too?
Kris not being the Knight.
Yeah, I think now too, I've definitely talked myself. Yeah, I'm on the not Knight side.
Well, let me continue.
Okay,
let me finish it off. So, and why would Kris want to cause the roaring anyway, endangering the whole world, their friends, and their family? From what we know about Kris, they seem to be misunderstood and not an evil person. Finally, when you get a game over screen in the game and select the give up option, it states that the world was covered in darkness. This implies that the roaring happened. However, if Kris was the Knight, that wouldn't be possible because Kris's soul would have been broken during an event of a game over, and they would be unconscious and thus not being able to open enough dark fountains to cause the roaring. So Kris cannot possibly be the Roaring Knight that the game has been setting up.
I'm thinking that, and even like with my other points earlier, I think I want to move Kris Is Roaring Knight into some possibility because I really do see, yeah, right there. I really do see a lot of arguments on there, and I could kind of see in some way, like I like the player versus player narrative and all that stuff, but Kris is not the Roaring Knight makes more sense. High possibility. I really don't think Kris will be the Knight.
Wow. Okay, so you've sworn your allegiance.
I've sworn my allegiance. Yeah.
Now everyone will be attacking you. No, I'm joking.
Yep.
Please, guys, please
don't
keep it
attack
simple,
me.
all right? This is just all fun. And
I know.
I wanna know that for any theories that we maybe say are like, oh, this is like has no chance of being right, it doesn't mean that we don't like the theory or that we like don't like the people that think that the theory is right. It's just that we personally do not believe in the theory.
Yeah.
So it's just all in good
Everyone
fun.
can have their own opinions. We're all
Exactly.
entitled to our own opinions, and don't attack people for their opinions on a video game. My
Very
God.
true. Very
You
true.
know, like, Jesus.
All right, so moving on. This theory is that Susie comes from a human village. So Susie is a character that is an outcast in hometown, one that nobody understands and judges on first impression. Susie also has weird dialogue that contradicts what other monsters seem to say to us. Susie states that everyone bleeds, even though monsters in hometown ask Kris what it feels like to be made of blood, which correlates to the notion that monsters don't bleed or have blood. Susie is also new to hometown, so she had to have come from a different town or city before. What if the previous town that Susie was at was one populated only by humans? It would explain why she thinks everyone bleeds, and why she doesn't fit in a town full of monsters, and why she hides her tail in a town where many people have tails. And it would also explain why Susie gravitates so much to Kris, because not only are they human, but are going through a very similar experience to what she had to go through previously.
I do like that theory a lot. It even makes sense why we've never seen anyone in Susie's family. I've never really ever considered that. Ooh, I do like that. That's interesting. I know, because it's like, I feel like there's a few things, like, because it's almost like, what if humans and monsters aren't the only two races? Like, this is kind of a shot in the dark, but like, in like the most literal sense, what if Susie is like a dinosaur? Like, you know what I mean?
The
Like,
own dinosaur species.
yeah,
is
like
its
they're
own
like it's like a
separate-
thing where it's like they're not necessarily monsters, but like also not human, and so like she hides her tail and all that stuff. Kind of saying it here because if like that insane theory happens, like then I said it here. I could really see that.
Where do you want to put it?
That's not, it's teetering on high possibility to some possibility.
Do you think it has a better possibility of than happening from Kris being the Knight?
Definitely much
Okay.
for sure. Like if it's in some possibility, it's like all the way up, low high possibility, but very high some possibility. I'm gonna just say some possibility. Just cause maybe later on, however we're going, I can move it up or not. But like that there's a lot of weight to that one, and I think it would make a lot of sense. So
One theory that sort of branched off of this one, which I didn't include, but I'm just curious to see what your take is that Susie is like half human,
half human, half monster.
And that kind of relates to what you were saying before, like a new
yeah.
species.
Like, and that's why she's an outcast. Yeah, and like,
and also in support
yeah.
of that evidence, there was a scrapped sprite of Susie in chapter 2. Remember when she like fell down from the trash heap?
Yes.
And Ralsei healed her.
Yes.
There's a scrapped sprite of her actually bleeding.
See, okay, that theory on Susie being half human, half monster, I think I would almost put in like very high possibility. Like I'd put that all the way in high possibility. However, how do we know Susie came from a human village? Like what if Susie like came, I'm now, okay, that theory that you just said on that has now cemented the some possibility theory, because now I'm doubting it's a human village. What if she came from another monster village and her parental figure that was a human stumbled into a monster village and then like got acclimated and then like got with a monster and then had Susie, and for whatever reason they went to this village. I really like the theory of her being like hybrid human monster.
So our next one, we have our first Gaster theory. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I know there's a lot of Gaster theories and things.
A lot of these theories are related to Gaster in the future, but
had a feeling.
This is the first one. So This is the theory that Gaster is both the Eggman and the Knight. This is covered and popularized by Half-Bred Chaos. It's not made by them, but they did cover it and present it to a lot of people, so I put them down. So Gaster is the legendary Easter egg of Undertale. But what if he was something more in Deltarune? What if Gaster has been behind not only the dark fountains that we see, but also the strange Eggman in Deltarune? In Deltarune, there is a room in which you can find the Eggman in chapter 2. Right before then, there's a room of a tree painted onto the wall. When reading it, it says, the room in between, there is a room in between. In order to find the Eggman, you literally have to go in between two rooms by going back and forth. This is very similar to how you find Gaster's sprite, the Mystery Man sprite in Undertale, literally being found in a room between two separate rooms if your fun value is the correct one. The person behind the tree is described as a man, a very vague description, similar to how Gaster is referred to in many places. The file of Gaster's theme is called MUSST Hymn, and the name of the song in the Goner Maker with Gaster is called Another Hymn. So being called only man would fit Gaster. Not only to mention, once you interact with the man, it disappears, very similar to how Gaster and the Gaster followers disappear when you interact with them. The egg that the man gives you also has very strange properties, disappearing and duplicating in the light world. It would make sense that an object given to you by a man scattered across time and space would have very strange properties. And if we take the word egg and put it into wingdings, it gives us a hand pointing left and two hands pointing up, which matches the movement that a knight would make in the game of chess, which is saying that Gaster is the knight. This would be because Gaster is the one controlling the experience of Deltarune. He tells us on Twitter to download his survey program, and he is the one that organizes the save files in the game of Deltarune. In order to make this sort of experience a fun and thrilling game for the player, of course you need challenge and new environments and unique experiences, which is why Gaster creates the Dark Fountains in the first place, to create an enjoyable game for the player. He does all this to test his experiment of the game of Deltarune and to observe the player and their actions.
Okay, so Gaster being the Eggman, I would argue canon. Absolutely 100%. That's one I would put in canon. Gaster being the knight, absolutely not. Never had a chance. So that's why I want to put this in some possibility right in the middle.
All the way at the top of some possibility?
Sure.
Interesting. That's interesting to say that, because if him being the Eggman, that would mean, like I said before, about the word of egg in wingdings would be the movement of the knight, the hands.
Yeah. I don't think that Gaster is the knight. I think he's the Eggman, because I just think that there's too much going on. He's the Eggman, he's the knight, he's everything. No, I think there's another character that's going to be the knight, and he's his own entity. He's his own entity that transcends the game in Undertale, and I think he's his own entity that transcends the game in Deltarune. But Eggman, I mean, look at his head.
It's like an egg.
It's like an egg. I mean, that's like the most, like he is the Eggman. Like the whole thing when they describe the Eggman with how behind the tree and all, like the hymn stuff, done deal to me. maybe like the whole thing with the wingdings being like with the night hand stuff, like he isn't the knight, but maybe they'll refer to people who can also open the portals as knights, and that's like the subtle way of saying like he's not the knight, but he can open the fountains.
Interesting. Wait, let me bring up one piece of evidence I left out, but maybe this may change you. I don't know.
Okay.
You remember how in the bunker it plays like this weird noise, right?
Yeah.
If you speed that up by 666%, it gives you the smile.ogg sound that's heard in entry 17, the entry that Gaster wrote in Undertale. And also that same sound is heard when you use the cell phone in the Dark World.
Oh, I remember doing
maybe that Gaster has a Dark World in the bunker. So wouldn't that mean he's the knight? Because he already has been shown to open up a Dark World.
I think that the whole thing with him opening a Dark World entrance in the bunker, like I think that probably could be a thing. But like I was saying earlier, I still don't think he's the knight. I think he can open up fountains though. No one really seems to know much about Gaster besides like Spamton, because he's like talking to Gaster. But like
we'll get to that.
I don't think Spamton knows that Gaster can open stuff. I think if there's any character that knows of Gaster's existence, I think Ralsei honestly might have an idea about that. Obviously, like no one in the Dark World knows Kris can open portals or the fountains. I mean, they just don't. It's just like a thing where people in the Dark World, like no one knows that. And I think if they knew, like there'd be more info on the knight being maybe a little bit more related to Gaster. I don't know. I just really don't think he's the knight.
All right, so we're moving on to the next theory. Piles of Asriel Dust. And this theory is created by Jaru Jaru J. It's a pretty popular theory.
Okay.
But let's see if you believe it or not. So Jaru believes that Ralsei and Flowey have a lot of similarities. They both are the first entity that talks to you after you fall into a new world.
Wait. I just realized Asriel and Ralsei are anagrams.
Don't worry, I mentioned
that.
I
never even noticed that. I just did now looking at that. I'm like, hold on a second.
Luke, did you also know that Deltarune is an anagram of Undertale?
I did know that, yeah.
Okay.
No, I knew that. I did know. But I had never put that together. And like, I never ever heard that, ever.
Luke's getting all the new information right now, all the new discoveries.
I can't wait for June 5th. Like, June 5th is going to be crazy for me because I got to be playing the Switch 2, but I also have to play Chapter 3 of Deltarune. Like, that's like, I'm going to be going between the Switch 2 and then my PC. This is just getting me so hyped for Chapter 3 right now.
Yeah, we're catching you up on everything you missed.
I hate that I'm getting so excited about it now because, like, now I have to think in June.
Now you have to wait a month. When we had to wait like 3.5 years. Okay, buddy.
No, I'm just saying, like, it's just like June is such a packed month for me right now. May is just like gonna be a drag because now this is just yet another thing in June that like I'm looking forward to. But I know, I mean, RIP for everyone waiting years for this. Like that's tough.
So to continue, so they both are the first entity that talks to you after you fall into a new world. Both teach you about the soul, and both have some relation to Asriel Dreamer. In the case of Ralsei being an anagram of Asriel.
Yeah, I mean,
Ralsei also has unique properties unlike other Darkners, like not being able to turn to stone and teleporting to other Dark Worlds. Not to mention that Ralsei has knowledge that most Darkners don't, like the roaring, Susie and Kris's names before they introduce themselves, and how Darkners work within the light world. Flowey in Undertale was an experiment by putting determination and Asriel's dust from when he died onto a flower. So, if Ralsei is the Deltarune version of Flowey, then that must mean that Ralsei was created from an object with Asriel's dust, given life by a dark fountain.
Oh yeah, and wait, that actually also kind of would make sense how like every Dark World character is like represented in the real world as like an object.
Yeah, but wait,
okay.
It keeps on going. This means that Asriel is dead, just like how he is in Undertale. Nobody in Hometown seems to have contact with Asriel, and instead asks Kris to communicate to Asriel for them. So the story goes that Jaru paints is that Kris planned to play a prank with a red horn headband, a knife, and a costume, and planned to scare anyone who walked into the supply closet. Asriel, seeing Kris up to some mischief, of course went in, and Kris, not expecting their brother to be there, accidentally tripped and stabbed the knife into Asriel. Kris, wanting to bring their brother back to life, researches any and all magic. Eventually, Kris goes back to the supply closet and finds the Dark World with Susie. That gives them hope that maybe their brother can come back to life, seeing Ralsei. So, they create a dark fountain in their own home, even after the weird route when everything seems to go bad in the dark fountains.
I don't know how I feel about the whole prank thing. thing. I don't really see where that like comes from.
Well, Kris, we do know, is a prankster. Noelle says that Kris used to hide underneath her bed and scare them, and used to tell tales of Icy sort of eating kids and stuff.
I don't know, that to me feels like it was kind of pulled out of. I see the whole prank thing, but like,
and the whole costume thing with this prank is because the red headbands that Toriel mentions that Kris used to have. So Kris put them on, it got Asriel's dust on it, and that object would be Ralsei, which Ralsei has, you know, colored horns, unlike every other dreamer.
Yeah, I mean, the whole theory on how like Ralsei has the Asriel dust and like all that, there's so much overwhelming evidence for that. I mean, literally, Asriel is an anagram for Ralsei. Obviously, the anagrams mean a lot in Undertale and Deltarune.
Yeah.
I really like all of that. I don't know about the whole prank part. I feel like Kris having something to do with Asriel's death. I think I did say something like that like a while ago. I feel like that theory like is going on either like all the way to the top of high possibility or canon. I'm gonna say all the way up on high possibility.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think Jar will be very happy to hear that. So, next theory, we have Alvin is the Roaring Knight.
Everyone's the Roaring Knight.
Yeah, just a preface, we do have like a lot of who is the Roaring Knight theories.
Everyone. I mean, I'm the Roaring Knight.
What if the Roaring Knight was someone we least expected in Hometown? What if the knight was Father Alvin? Alvin is the priest of Hometown and conducts the religion which they worship the angel, a higher being that watches upon every person. Since the legend describes the heroes banishing the angel's heaven, wouldn't the Roaring Knight, who would be against the heroes, want to be in favor of the angel, the one that wants to cause the roaring in which the angel's heaven would exist? Gerson, Alvin's father, is someone in Deltarune that wrote the Lord of the Hammer book series, one that is very famous and well known enough to get a bench in Gerson's name. This bench states that Gerson got his idea from dreams. Dreams have a heavy relation to Dark Worlds. In Chapter 1, Susie asked if the Card Castle Dark World was just a dream, and in Chapter 2, Noelle and Birdley believed that the Cyber World was just a dream. In the Legend of Deltarune, it also states that this is a story of hopes and dreams. It's likely that Gerson knew about Dark Worlds and perhaps relayed this information to Alvin either in his books or through the word of mouth, which would explain why Alvin would know about the Roaring, calling himself the Roaring Knight, and would know how to create a dark fountain in the first place. Also, in Spamton's shop, when you talk about the Knight, Spamton says, speaking of communion, Kris, did you know that the Knight, communion obviously being related to the church and its themes? And when visiting the graveyard in Chapter 2, you can hear Alvin whispering to himself after Susie and Kris leave, saying, "Were you proud of me, Father? And is it right for this hammer to?" before getting cut off. It would make sense if Alvin used the hammer to create a dark fountain and goes to the grave of his father, the same man that told him about Dark Worlds in the first place, to ask him if his actions are just. Alvin is a man believing what he does would help to benefit his angel that he has faith in, but knows about the consequences of his actions, which leads to a more nuanced look at our Roaring Knight.
I do like that theory a lot. I think like the Knight being someone we would least expect and being in the human world, like definitely. I think Alvin being the Roaring Knight, out of everyone so far that's been theorized to be the Roaring Knight on here, I truly believe that he makes the most sense to me. It just like fits a lot of someone we wouldn't know or think about, so that'd be like a crazy reveal. All of the stuff with his father, and I really like that theory. I'm gonna put that in all the way at the bottom of high possibility.
Okay. Do you think Asriel Dust is more likely than Alvin?
I'd say, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the Alvin theory, like, I could really see that being.
Yeah, this is a popular one in the community.
I'd say.
Okay. So moving on. This is kind of a big theory.
Oh, I do know about this one too.
A little bit, okay.
A little bit. This one I actually think could be canon, but let's hear it first.
Yeah.
Like
so this is chess theory, made by Ozzy Flowey and has been extended by Awesome Andrew Games. So some people have noticed a strange pattern with Deltarune and its main antagonists for each dark world. It was sort of strange that we have a king king and a queen simply just being named king and queen, which is very confusing for Toby Fox, who has come up with creative names for all of his characters. So what Lawwall proposes is that Deltarune is following a chess pattern with its major Dark World antagonists, and that each antagonist will descend in order of the piece's value in the game of chess. Of course, we start out with King, who represents the king chess piece, the highest value piece. Just like a king in chess, King in Deltarune doesn't move around too much and stays at the top of his card castle, only attacking when threatened. Next is Queen, the second highest value piece, and just like a queen in chess, moves all throughout each area in Chapter 2, a very active character just like the queen piece in chess. This means that we will get a rook for Chapter 3, who we know will be Mike or Tenna, or perhaps both, representing the two rooks on the board of chess. And Mike is coming right after the defeat of Spamton in Chapter 2, in which Spamton is a pawn or a puppet. The rook piece can only be moved after a pawn has been moved on the board or defeated. Next would be the bishop, which with the trailer that we got recently points towards the church being the Chapter 4 Dark World, in which a bishop could likely take the big antagonist role for that chapter. In Chapter 5, we will fight the Roaring Knight, which represents the knight piece in the game of chess. And in Chapter 6, we will fight a pawn or multiple pawns. And the biggest area of Deltarune that has multiple items of importance is upstairs in Asgore's flower shop. There are 7 colored flowers that are referencing the 7 human souls in Undertale. However, we are missing a red flower to represent the red soul, so perhaps that will be the leader of these pawns when a fountain is created in this room. Finally, Chapter 7 will end off with fighting not a chess piece, but the player on the other side of the board, the one that controls the game and decides the actions of the pieces. Yes, this will be WD Gaster, our final antagonist at the end of the game. Those pieces and the player represent the black pieces of the board, the ones that want to spread darkness throughout the world, while on the white side, we will have pieces that represent those that want to stop the spread of darkness, our allies. Every party member is included in this team, along with notable characters and darkness that help us out on our journey. And that means, of course, that the one controlling the white side of this chess game will be us, the player, the one that plays Deltarune, meaning that the entirety of Deltarune will be one big chess game between you, the player, and WD Gaster.
Canon. I mean, I love every single thing about that theory, and I'd put that in between T theory and the mayor. Like, the mayor one to me is so like, yeah, that is it. And the chess one, like, some of it is like, we're not really gonna know until very obviously later. Like, everything in canon is like, in my opinion, 100% happening. So the order doesn't really matter, you know? But like, chess, absolutely, 100%, that's what's happening.
Interesting. Okay.
Or at the very least, like, the villains being, I mean, king, queen.
Why isn't like the king called like the Great Medieval Spade King or
anything?
Or like the queen is called like the cyber
queen,
the cyber monarch or whatever.
Yeah, some too. Yeah, but like it's just like, and even the knight, like the knight. Like, there's so much overwhelming evidence on this one. I absolutely 100%.
So this one I think is one that is basically really popular within the community.
Gaster,
one that you probably heard about already.
Okay.
And I probably discussed a little bit with you.
Yeah.
But this is the theory that Gaster made the secret bosses go insane.
Oh, so I remember you saying something about it, and I remember really liking this theory too. I feel like the really good theories that I've read on here so far, like, I really like them. It's a fun theory.
All right, so WD Gaster has had a bigger role and a more direct role in Deltarune than in Undertale. But what if I told you that he already affected the story in an important way? That is, by being the reason why the secret bosses went insane. From Spamton's backstory, we know that he had a strange caller reach out to him, telling him what to do, which brought Spamton success and fame. This person, however, one day vanished and stopped calling. Spamton then started to fall from grace and reached out to this someone one last time. However, when an Addison went to go check up on him, he only found a hanging receiver at the end of the phone. When putting it to his ear, he described it as only being garbage noise. This is the same description of when Kris uses their phone in the Dark World, which plays the sound that is used in Entry 17, Gaster's lab notes written entirely in Wingdings. In Entry 17, Gaster also describes photons reading negative and that the darkness keeps growing, which describes the creation of a dark fountain. Not to mention that on the Deltarune website, on a page way back in December 2016, a single line of dialogue was written in Wingdings. When translated, it reads, "The 3 heroes appeared to banish the angels' heaven," which describes the legend of the game in Deltarune. And with the knowledge that Gaster is controlling both the save file and the Gonnermaker sequence at the beginning of Chapter 1, it means that Gaster has strong ties to Dark Worlds in general, and likely has a means to connect to these dark worlds and dark nerves. Because Jevil in their backstory was also described to have met a strange someone, and after meeting them, Jevil started to say these insane ramblings and enact these insane actions described by Sham, which means that this strange person is most likely Gaster, and likely told Spamton and Jevil information that made their mind go mad. Since both Spamton and Jevil seem to have future knowledge of events within the game of Deltarune, like Jevil predicting the existence of the Queen and Spamton predicting the existence of Mike, maybe the thing that Gaster told them was that their existence was a farce. They were simply discarded items in the everyday world, or that they were simply characters inside of a simulation set up by Gaster.
This is like my own theory on this one. I think that this is going to be a theory where like it's going to be something that is never explicitly stated, but I think every single time we get a secret boss, it's going to be something related to Gaster and they go insane. I don't know if we're ever going to learn the exact words of what Gaster like said to them. The fact that now we've gotten both times that there's a secret boss, they've literally been insane, and like they have connection, or at least like Spamton had like the very obvious connections to Gaster there, where like it was like confirmed. Jevil like meeting the figure and all like that, like to me is like definitely.
Yeah.
I'd say canon. I think I'm gonna put that under T theory.
Oh, really? Okay. Another thing that sort of goes into this theory that people bring up is that each different secret boss will represent sort of a way someone can react to knowing that your existence is sort of fake.
Oh, yeah, that
or
would
that
be
your
cool.
choices don't matter. Because if your existence wasn't fake, there's multiple ways to respond. Obviously, Jevil like treats it like a game, you know. If
Yeah.
everything's fake, then Jevil can do everything, right?
Yep.
And Spamton, he gets like so like depressed, and he wants to sort of find this power to sort of break free from this fake world and sort of gain back his control.
Yeah, I love that theory.
Okay, so we're moving on to this next one. There's going to be a secret boss in Chapter 3 that references Flowey. This is by Zora Dementio. Zora noticed a pattern with the secret bosses in Deltarune. Each of them seems to be a discarded item within the room that they are in. Jevil is a Joker card, a playing card that is commonly taken out of when playing most card games. And Spamton is a spam email, which is emails that are usually put into the trash bin. Since we know that Chapter 3 will take place inside of the Dreamer house, there's a pretty clear item inside that has been discarded over and over again. This item is the flowers that Asgore gives Toriel that are constantly thrown into the trash, leaving a floral scent that is emitted. So the secret boss of Chapter 3 will be the flowers in the trash can. And since Spamton Neo, a secret boss, referenced a previous Undertale boss with Metaton Neo, this secret boss, being the flowers, will reference Flowey, being a parallel to Omega Flowey boss fight in Undertale. People have already come up with a fan name for the secret boss, being Petally, and has even made a plush for it too. Just a little fun fact.
That's adorable.
And if you want to see an image of Petally,
I really do.
this is what they think Petally is, and it will look like. So.
That's incredible. I think that's a really fun theory. I would say some possibility. And then, I mean, I'd put it above Ghastly, and I'd put it above Kris Is the Knight. Yeah, probably right there. I feel like there's a lot leaning heavy on it being the Chapter 3 boss, and I don't know if it's going to be the Chapter 3 boss per se. Jevil doesn't really reference any Undertale boss in any way, I feel. You know, like Jevil's kind of its own thing. And I think like the whole discarded flower thing, I like. I think though if we get a Flowey secret boss, it's not going to be until later, like maybe like a Chapter 5 sort of deal. I just don't really think they would pull that out in Chapter 3, especially since Flowey is such like a big part of Undertale. Literally like Omega Flowey is like the final boss, or no, Asriel I think actually is.
Omega Flowey is the final boss in the neutral route.
Yeah.
So Asriel's the final boss in the
pacifist.
true pacifist.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think they would put that out in Chapter 3. That's why I'm going to put that in some possibility, but I think there's a lot of evidence that like I could see that happening. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes that route, but yeah, I'm going to say I like where it is in some possibility. I like that theory.
Yeah, it's fun. And Petally has merch, like official.
I think that's funny as hell.
So,
I love that they did that.
All right, so next one. This one sort of has little sub theories for it.
Yeah, I see there's like 4 different Megalovanias on here.
That you'll sort of rank, but this first one is the main one that sort of ties into the other ones. So this theory is that Megalovania will appear in Deltarune. Throughout
The song?
Yeah, the song. Every Toby Fox project, there has been one song that has always been included, that being Megalovania. It appeared in his Earthbound Halloween hack.
Oh, it did, didn't it?
Yeah, it appeared in Homestuck, which he composed music for, Undertale, of course, and even Super Smash Bros. characters. So
Yeah.
why should Deltarune be any different? We already know that Megalovania doesn't just have to be a theme for Sans. It can go to many different characters, which just likely means that Megalovania will be remixed in the game of Deltarune.
I do like that theory, and that actually just stemmed off of something I just thought of now. That what if like the final secret boss is Sans again?
Interesting.
Because that's such an iconic boss fight, and like the hardest boss fight in Undertale and Deltarune. Like they pull a Radon in Elden Ring, and like it's just Sans again. But I think like if we're just talking about Megalovania appearing,
yes,
the possibility of that is so unbelievably high. I'm gonna say above Asriel Dust, but not canon yet. Yeah.
So, going off of that, we got Susie Megalovania. So people think that Susie will be the one that will have the Megalovania song attached to her.
Okay.
So, Susie has already fought against Kris and Ralsei in Chapter 1, and even had a solo fight with Lancer all on her own after finding out that Lancer locked away the protagonist to save them from his father. Susie, in turn, attacked Lancer because she thought that Lancer was lying to her the whole time and never truly was her friend in the end. Who's to say that Susie won't act in a very similar way when she finds out that Kris is being controlled by the player, believing that Kris wasn't her real friend, just being puppeted the entire time. This will lead to a fight between Kris and Susie, in which Megalovania will play once again, remixing it with the Versus Susie theme that played before.
I like that one.
Do you want me to read every single one?
Yeah, read all of them.
And then you rank
Yeah,
it?
read all of them.
Okay.
That is interesting. But I'll save where I'm gonna put that for after we hear them all, because
Okay.
I have some thoughts on that one.
Ralsei Megalovania. So, Ralsei has been with us throughout the entire journey in Deltarune. However, Ralsei doesn't really have a piece of music that represents only him as a character. Ralsei also likes to believe in pacifism, only fighting when absolutely necessary. How do you think Ralsei will react when they realize that Kris and the player have been enacting Snowgrave to real-world people and Darkners? Just like Sans and Genocide route of Undertale, Ralsei will be put up against the wall as the last beacon of defense against the player. By using the power of a Shadow Crystal, Ralsei would become more powerful than ever before and will be able to truly give us a hard fight befitting of the song Megalovania. Alright, so that was the one for Ralsei.
Okay.
Now this is Sham's Megalovania. So, Sham, the old shopkeeper that resides in the castle town, is a very apathetic Darkner, a characteristic shared with Sans from Undertale. Sham also seems to have knowledge of powerful magic items like the Shadow Crystals, and even seems to know about the player. Sham tells the party how to pronounce their name, even though Sham already pronounced their name in the same dialogue box, which means that Sham was addressing the player, not the characters. Sham also has been told to us to be a very powerful mage in their own right, wielding an item called the Seam Ripper, I think. It's spelled the same way as Sham, so I don't know, but which shows that Sham definitely has the power to be able to give the player a challenging fight. They even reference the entry 17 line with the phrase darker yet darker, possibly showing a connection to Gaster, which could imply that Sham will be a secret boss in the future, a fight that will be accompanied by the Megalovania song.
Okay, so Sham being another fight in the future or having connections to Gaster and like all that, I mean maybe, but I'm gonna say never had a chance for Megalovania because I really just don't.
Oh, for Sham?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I really just don't think that's going to happen. Like, honestly, I think if we get Megalovania in here, I don't know why, I just really feel like they're going to do a Secret Sans fight. Honestly, out of the three characters here, I don't think it's going to be on Susie. And I think that Susie, it's going to be a remix of Versus Susie. That one is like high, never had a chance, low possibility. So I think right there, just because like, I feel like I could see Susie as like a final boss sort of thing against Kris making a lot of sense. But I don't think Megalovania will be the song. I just think it's going to be like a different thing. And Ralsei with Megalovania, I don't know. I don't think that really fits Ralsei.
But it could be remixed though.
And it could be remixed, and yeah, I guess.
And like I wrote out and said, you know, Ralsei doesn't really have a theme.
True.
In Deltarune.
That is true. But I also think maybe we would just get a new song for Ralsei. Like I don't know. I don't know.
Do you think Ralsei is higher than the other two though, or?
That's where I'm kind of going back and forth right now. Because like the no theme thing and it being a remix is like the only part of this theory that like is putting it above never had a chance, because like there is some like doubt. You know what I mean? That's the only one where I'm like, maybe. So I think all the way at the bottom, a low possibility.
So you think Nick and Ralsei has a higher chance?
Yeah, not, but like I think it'll be another Sans fight.
All right, so next one. We have another
I
one.
have a hunch.
We have another one
All
by Jaru Jaru J.
Damn, Jar Jar J's on fire.
Yeah, this isn't, I don't think this is, no, this is not the last theory that we have, I don't think.
From them?
Wait, actually
Or-
it might be.
I was gonna say, like, damn.
No, it's actually not. We have one more.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so this is by Jar Jar J. It's the Oberon Smog theory. So, it's pretty convincing that Alvin could be the Knight of Deltarune, right? However, one problem with that theory, and with many Knight theories, is that why would King, a Darkner that hates Lightners, worship the Knight and put faith in them? Well, what if the Knight isn't a Lightner and is in fact a Darkner? A Darkner that possesses unique abilities, one that is able to have determination and is able to create these dark fountains. This is where Jaru believes that the Alvin hints in the game is a red herring.
Oh.
Since Alvin did not have a talking sprite, it means that his role will be very minor within the story.
Well, they could add one later.
Well, we'll see. The true important character is in fact related to Alvin's father, Gerson. This Darkner would be made from Gerson's boom's dust spread onto his hammer that was buried within his grave. The hammer, well buried, likely fell into the facility that the bunker houses just south of the graveyard. This facility obviously houses a dark fountain in which it exposes the dusted hammer and brings it to life. This fountain would have been created by Gaster, since the slowdown audio by the bunker plays the Entry 17 soundbite. This new entity would have the appearance of Gerson and his memories. Wanting to know about its own purpose and its creation, it seeks the angel within the legend, which can only be found when the roaring would occur. Using its memories from Gerson, it would create a fountain in Gerson's old classroom. It would put King into power. King, believing that this is a Darkner, puts his faith in this entity to bring more darkness to the world. Would explain why King says the line chain of justice in his fight, which is a reference to Undyne from Undertale with her spear of justice, which in canon of Undertale, her spear of justice was inspired by Gerson, the hammer of justice from Undertale. Gerson, also being a book writer, would go to the library often, and this new entity would create a dark fountain in the library using Gerson's memories once again. And since we know that chapter 4 will likely take place within the church with that new trailer for Deltarune, that it also means that this new entity would also want to create a dark fountain in the spot of being the father of the priest of the church. Not to mention previous evidence from before about Gerson in Dark Worlds and Gerson in Undertale being associated with the symbol of Deltarune implies that he has some knowledge about Dark Worlds, which this new entity could get it from. It likely means that this new entity will be the Roaring Knight of Gerson Boom, and just like how Ralsei is an anagram of Asriel, this character's name will be Oberon Smog, an anagram of Gerson Boom, referencing the legendary Oberon, the Fairy King, and Smog that emits when a dark fountain is created.
That is a very interesting theory. Like there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on.
I honestly really enjoyed hearing that theory. I don't know. I feel like because there's so much happening and some of it feels a little tinfoil hat like, I think that there's some interesting ideas that are presented that I could almost see, like the whole thing Alvin being a red herring, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff there I like, even though if I don't necessarily agree with it, but like the whole hammer being in the bunker and all that, like I do kind of enjoy that. I kind of want to put it at the bottom of some possibility, just because I feel like low possibility is like just like some of the ridiculous like not, and I feel like there are some things there that like this one feels to me more crafted and thought out with, like that's really like high low possibility, low some possibility that I could see like certain parts of that theory being worked in, you know? I'm comfortable with that. Woody,
it's time. So this is a popular theory.
Really? Just from what I'm seeing from this image here, like I'm already thinking all the way at the bottom of Never Had a Chance.
Wait.
But I mean, I don't know, maybe the image here could be like a red herring where like we're talking about something completely different. You know what I mean?
You gotta hear it out, all right?
Okay.
And all these theories have evidence.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a single theory on here that does not have any evidence.
Well, but like, I mean, the flat earth theory has people thinking that like, because we can't see the other thing, like there's like a tiny little piece of that and that they did their whole theory, but like there's a lot of glaring issues with flat earthers.
But we'll see. So, big Woody theory. This is one that changed the fan base forever. All right?
Really?
Yeah. But anyway, so this is by Spooky Dude. All right. So Spooky Dude noticed something strange with the spring newsletter of 2023 that Toby Fox released about Deltarune. In it, Toby discusses a segment in Chapter 3 that featured new sprites of Kris and Susie wearing cowboy outfits. These sprites were shown to us not too long ago in the Spamton Sweepstakes event, but Toby had this to say about it. This segment is in danger of being canceled. Seriously, one of the only segments that we teased may end up canceled. Well, that's how cowboy shows go, I guess.
Wait. So, hold on. So, right now they're saying that they think the whole cowboy things in the newsletter isn't going to happen?
Well, Toby released that statement all the way back in spring of 2023.
Yeah.
So that's what he had to say.
In the trailer for Deltarune Chapter 3, didn't we, see the cowboy stuff in the, trailer?
Not in the actual trailer, but we'll get to that. Don't worry.
Okay.
This choice of dialogue was very strange.
Yeah, this is kind of already Spooky Dude here. Might be onto some. I don't know. This is
Spooky's cooking.
Spooky's kind of cooking here, and I feel like that's kind of a detail that I don't think I would have noticed that.
Yeah. So this choice of dialogue was very strange. How would Toby not fully know if a segment within his own game that he created would be left in or not?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
In a later newsletter of autumn 2023, Toby had announced another scrap segment in which he flat out said it was going to be scrapped and gave a detailed explanation as to why, which is the complete opposite of when he announced the cowboy segment being canceled. This segment that he references within this newsletter is the sneaking section that was going to be planned for Chapter 3 that got cut because it would be too slow. This then has to be another one of Toby's signature trolls. A little message that has double meaning, the whole cowboy line. The line, well, that's how cowboy shows go, I guess, has relation to the TV Dark World in Chapter 3. Perhaps this could be teasing a new character for Chapter 3. Alongside this, Toby Fox on Tumblr in 2019 released an edited version of You Got a Friend in Me from the Pixar movie Toy Story. Woody, Woody from the movie Toy Story, within the Toy Story actual universe, is a character that was in Sheriff Woody's Roundup TV show, a Western show that later got canceled in universe, making the toys for that show a rare collectible.
Oh my gosh.
So let me show you.
Wait, and also it being toys with the dark world that you know what I mean? If when they're not alive until they're in the dark world, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very true. That is not a point that I don't think was mentioned, but yeah, very true. But this is the friend inside me. Let me play it.
Yeah.
Let me play it for you. And this is by Toby Fox.
That's insane. Are we done with the?
No, we're not done.
Still more.
There's still more.
Okay, I have a thought on this one.
But since we know from this that Toby is a Toy Story fan and released a creepy song about Toy Story only a year after Deltarune Chapters 1 release, it means that when Toby says, well, that's how cowboy shows go, I guess, it's referencing the Sheriff Woody's Roundup TV show. And since we know that the secret bosses are discarded items related to the Dark World, a canceled Western TV show character heavily based upon Woody would fit perfectly. And since every secret boss has a theme about freedom in some way, this character could reference not being able to speak properly, only using pre-recorded messages from a sound box inside of them, like the actual Woody toy from Toy Story, thus being the friend inside them that Toby hinted on the Tumblr song. And this would explain Toby's strange dialogue in that newsletter. Not to mention, in very recent times, Go Nintendo released an article with official screenshots of Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. One of those screenshots showcases that the sneaking section that Toby had said was scrapped earlier was actually going to be implemented into the game, thus meaning that the cowboy segment will likely be in Chapter 3 and take part in this secret boss fight with a Woody-inspired character.
Wow, that is probably the most insane theory yet. That theory to me almost feels like it's there was just so much time in between the releases, people were just going insane.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Spooky Dude's kind of cooking here.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that theory. That I think is honestly my favorite theory so far.
Oh, wow.
This is bad shit crazy insane, and these are the type of theories I'm here for. I like the batshit crazy ones. It's hard because I love that idea so much. I really love this idea, and I feel like the evidence that is presented here, I almost could see it happening.
I mean,
but I don't
the weird dialogue, and then also
the canceled TV show stuff,
and then just a scrap segment that Toby announced later on that was basically cut and dry. This is scrap. Now, in a recent screenshot, we see that it's in the game.
This one is too insane and tinfoil hat I don't want to put it in high possibility, but at the same time, I love it so much I'm kind of struggling on this one.
Say what your heart says.
I'm feeling all the way at the top of some possibility for right now.
Okay. Gotcha.
I really like that theory a lot, and I feel like I could see it like actually happening.
Okay, so next theory, we have player angel. So what if the angel, the one that we've been told about, whose heaven that we have to banish, will be us, the player? We as players don't bring anything good to the lives of the characters in Deltarune. We control Kris against their will and force them to take our actions. And we can cause a snowgrave route, leaving only destruction left behind. But to us, our heaven would be the game of Deltarune, going to each dark world and have the game continuously go on with our control intact. So, in order to banish our heaven, the characters of Deltarune will have to sever our connection to the game itself. With this context, there's already some foreshadowing in the game and other sources about the player being the angel. In the religion of Hometown, the angel is described to be a figure that watches over the characters of Deltarune from a different plane, sort of like how we, the player, watch over the characters while playing the game of Deltarune. Not to mention the weird route in the fight against Birdly. If Kris goes down and loses their HP, Noelle comments on how she can still hear the haunting voice commanding her what to do, which proves that we have an omnipresent force in the game like the angel in Hometown religion. The angel doll in Rudy's room in the hospital describes it lacking any unique facial features, which implies that the angel is the player because we as players have many different appearances from each other. And in the context of Deltarune, we represent a concept rather than an individual. And in the Deltarune trailer for the Switch 2, the heart in the Deltarune logo in the animated sequence at the end is in the center of this powerful being that spreads open its wings, which is obviously supposed to represent the angel. All this points to is the story taking a direction very similar to Undertale, tackling the player's relationship to their games in a new perspective by having the player be the angel of legend.
And I think that would kind of fit into Chara being the second voice. It's like we're the angel and then Chara's like the devil, the player being the angel. I mean, there's a lot going for that one. I do like that theory a lot. That one is like in the some possibility to high possibility.
Above Woody theory or below?
No, I'm putting that below Woody theory, bro. Woody theory is iconic.
Okay.
I do like that theory. I think that's cool.
And another thing that I just remembered is in Undertale, the symbol Deltarune has a legend tied to it uniquely from Undertale that's not in Deltarune, which is that an angel will come down to the underground and clear it of all the monsters. Obviously, this implies either a genocide route or a pacifist route where you free everyone, and it can represent the player because the player, or Frisk, is the angel that comes down, sort of sets everyone free or kills them all, leaving the underground empty.
Yeah.
So maybe that means that the player in Deltarune is the same thing, the same angel.
There's a lot going on. I do like that theory.
All right, well.
The only reason, honestly, it's not higher up is just because I feel like I need a little more. I need more evidence for that one, and that's why I'm not putting it all the way up.
All right, well, here's another angel theory.
Okay.
So maybe this one might be a little bit more believable. We'll see. So this is Noelle Angel. It's kind of weird that Noelle isn't in the legend of the Deltarune at all, right? Chapter 2 showed us her having a big role within the story. Her relationship with Des, Spamton, and the Weird Route all correlates to this. But maybe Noelle is actually in the legend. Maybe Noelle is the angel. Noelle has so many things about her relating to angels or the concept of an angel. Her and Des make the angel doll in Rudy's room. She is strung up on a big hand in chapter 2, looking like Jesus's crucifixion. In the Ferris wheel, Susie talks to Noelle, and Noelle says she wants to grow big angel wings. Spamton in the Weird Route calls Noelle Angel, and in order to use the Snowgrave spell, you have to give Noelle the Thorn Ring, which is a reference to Jesus's crown of thorns. And the biggest point is that the name Noelle refers to the birth of Jesus. All these points, and Noelle being able to gain greater and greater power in the Weird Route, implies that Noelle could be this powerful angel depicted in the legend. Then, that would mean that Noelle's heaven that we have to banish would be a dark world created by her, likely being made to try and heal her dying father.
Well, okay. I think that's kind of cool.
You think it's better than Player Angel?
No, I could see that one also. There's some good evidence on it.
There's a lot of evidence for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in the middle of Secret Boss and Human Village. I'm kind of more convinced on the player being the angel, but like Noelle being an angel, because there is a lot of Noelle Angel imagery too, though.
Oh, so a thing I forgot to mention in that is that in the Dark World, she wears like this white robe, very reminiscent of an angel.
Yeah, you know what? No, I think I've talked myself out of it. I think put that below Alvin is the Roaring Knight.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I mean, there's like a lot. I think that has kind of a higher possibility.
Yeah, like obviously,
Yeah.
this theory is not stating that she's like the actual figure in the religion, but just the angel in the legend.
Yeah.
The one's heavens that we have to banish.
Yeah, and I feel like she's also like known too as like she's just like being like with goodness and all that stuff too, you know?
All right, so this next one, the Chapter 3 and future Weird Route characters. So, the introduction of Chapter 2's Weird Route shows us a path the player can take in the game of Deltarune. Obviously, we'll be able to continue this route in future chapters. However, we know that Noelle won't be in the Chapter 3 Dark World. But what if you can continue the Weird Route without using Noelle's power, and instead by using other party members that are introduced in each chapter? Since we know that Toriel will be inside Chapter 3's fountain, it implies that we will see her in the Weird Route. And if Toriel sees Kris, obviously she would want to help Kris, thus joining our party. Toriel in Undertale is known for her fire magic, and in Deltarune Chapter 2, Rudy mentions an ability called Fire Shock, right after Noelle uses Ice Shock in her video game called Dragon Blazers. This is referencing Noelle's Ice Shock, which is the whole reason the Weird Route exists in the first place. So that must mean that this Fire Shock ability must also exist, and since Toriel uses fire magic, she'll be able to use this Fire Shock ability, being able to burn enemies so that they can't run away from a typical violence run. If we are continuing the Weird Route, we will need a Lightner inside the Dark World to be killed by our manipulation, like how we do with Birdly. And Toriel calls the police at the end of Chapter 2, meaning that the police officer Undyne will be the victim of Toriel's upgraded Fire Shock and will continue the Weird Route. This trend will continue with each and every chapter as well, with having a unique party member that we get and that we will manipulate in the Weird Route.
I don't know about that one though.
Why do you think so?
Like manipulating Toriel and all that stuff's kinda, I gotta think about that one for a sec.
I mean, you gotta think about it. Like, before Chapter 2 released, do you really think it was possible we'd be able to manipulate Noelle?
Yeah, you're right. I think that one's gonna go into some possibility.
Okay. Where would you put it around?
After Kris is the Roaring Knight and Secret Boss.
Okay.
Right there.
All right, so this one, RK, or Rouxls Knight. Rouxls' card leaves a note in Chapter 1 about his puzzle. However, it's signed as RK. Another prominent figure in Deltarune that has the initials RK is the Roaring Knight.
Yeah.
What if this was foreshadowing that Rouxls' card will be the Roaring Knight? It would explain why King would trust the Knight because it's Rouxls, a Darkner, not a Lightner.
True, and like, wait, like a Knight is enforcing like rules.
And Rouxls also appears in Chapter 2, likely because he was the creator of that fountain. This trend will continue with Rouxls appearing in each dark fountain. However, instead of fighting minions or machines controlled by him in Chapters 1 and 2, in the climax of the story we'll be able to actually fight Rouxls by himself, in which he'll show us that truly he is the Roaring Knight, or RK.
Yeah, I don't think he's the Roaring Knight.
Why not? I mean, it fits.
Well, yeah, but it seems a little on the nose, and I think that the theory on Alvin is a little more plausible to me. It fits, and I see the argument, I really do, but I don't really think he is the Roaring Knight. I think I'm gonna put that in the high-low possibility.
Okay, more so than Naked Ralsei. Got it.
Yeah. It's a ridiculous theory. I don't know. It's just like really.
All right, so we got this theory. This theory is actually a pretty new one.
Okay.
I will say. I think it was made like a month ago.
Oh.
This is Ralsei is the vessel theory, made by Sonsa K. So, Ralsei is a very odd character in Deltarune. There are so many things that make Ralsei different from every other character and Darkner within the game. Ralsei knows Kris and Susie's names before they even introduce themselves, seems to have knowledge of the player by referencing viewpoints only the player would know, like helping Susie with the puzzle in Chapter 1 and the location of the TP bar. Ralsei also can take the viewpoint of the player away from Kris and uses this time to talk to Kris alone, away from the player. Not to mention Ralsei in the Weird Route, when not being able to take the perspective away, gets unusually anxious, not knowing what happened with Susie and Noelle in private, almost like the sequence went off script. Ralsei also seems to have way more knowledge than any other Darkner, like the Roaring and about Darkners turning to stone. But Ralsei has apparently never left his castle town before. So, what if the reason Ralsei has all this knowledge and abilities is because he's the vessel? The the vessel is a goner. We know this because the names of the different parts of the vessel have been called goner in the files, which is related to the Gaster followers from Undertale. And a known ability that the Gaster followers have been able to do is to teleport, sort of similar to how Ralsei teleports in between dark fountains. It would also explain why Ralsei seems to have very little history in his backstory and why he doesn't know what it's like to be himself. This is because he was created right before we play as Kris and the Goner Maker. In the files of the game of Deltarune, it also saves the data for which goner you make, likely to have a reveal with Ralsei later on. And in the Goner Maker sequence, you get special reactions for inputting different characters' names in Deltarune. However, there's nothing for Ralsei, likely because he is the one being named in that sequence. And since we know the Goner Maker is controlled by Gaster, it's likely that Ralsei got all of his information from Gaster himself, and would explain why he knows about the player and the mechanics of the game. Ralsei even describes the legend as being from time and space, similarly to how Gaster was shattered across time and space. So likely Gaster created the legend and repurposed the discarded vessel to be Ralsei and lead the heroes on a set path, hence why he freaked out when things went off script. And finally, the nail that sets this theory in stone is that in Chapter 2, the Ruden next to the entrance of Castle Town, the town run by Ralsei, says that the name for this town is in reference what the player put as the creator in the Goner Maker sequence. Followed by that, the Ruden says that they heard it from someone. This someone has to have been Ralsei. Since it is his castle town, it would make sense he would give it a name. The same name that he heard while being created in the Goner Maker sequence, and why his robe has an empty heart on it, implying that the lost soul that Ralsei lost was supposed to have been in the Goner Maker.
I can't believe that theory was only made a month ago. I feel like there's so much overwhelming evidence supporting that would have been talked about sooner.
So, you know, we have so many theories, sometimes we overlook some of the most compelling evidence.
I'd actually put that in high possibility.
Really?
Yeah.
Where in that tier?
I'd say in between Alvin and the Angel.
Okay.
There's a lot of compelling evidence. That is a high possibility. I could definitely see that happening.
That's how you know it's a good theory when
I don't really have anything else to say about it. That for sure see that.
So this is our last night theory, but it is one of the bigger ones.
The 7 Nights theory?
Seven Nights. Yeah. This is by Cammy Boy G. People have been debating who is the knight for so long, and have been providing evidence for so many different characters to be the knight. However, Cammy proposes that instead of there being just one knight, there's in fact 7. One for each dark world that will appear in each chapter. The fact that so many characters reference the idea of knight, like Susie being called a dark knight in the menu, Birdly wearing glow-in-the-dark knight armor, and Kris also wearing knight armor, implies that there could be more than one knight. And we also have some dialogue that also implies the same sentiment, like Sham saying a strange knight appeared. It could imply that there could be more than one knight. Queen in general trying to make a new knight, and the title of Roaring Knight didn't appear until Chapter 2, implying that this is a different knight from the one that created the Chapter 1 Dark World. So, this all goes to show that the game is trying to tell us that there is more than one knight.
And I was saying that earlier.
Yeah.
You know?
So, who is the knight of each chapter? Well, this is what Cammy believes. Cammy says that Alvin is the Chapter 1's Fountain's knight, for the evidence mentioned in the Alvin Knight theory. Alvin's title is the Strange Knight, as told by Sham. Miss Boom is the knight of Chapter 2, Gerson's wife, who is trying to find a way to bring her husband back to life by using Gerson's laptop found within the computer lab, which would later be known as Queen. We know this because Queen has a connection to Ping, the playing card in Gerson's old classroom. Miss Boom would then be called the Roaring Knight, which is told to us by Queen. Obviously, Chapter 3 will have Kris being the knight, learning how to create a dark fountain from Queen at the end of Chapter 2 and doing it themselves, giving them the title of Silent Knight. Chapter 4 will have Susie be the knight, creating a church dark fountain, likely going to the church with the Dreamers the next day and learning how to make a dark fountain from Kris to make her own in the church's youth group room. She will be called the Dark Knight, in reference to the equip text. Chapter 5 will have Asgore be the knight, finding out how to create a dark fountain after he falls into the church's dark fountain after being scolded by Toriel to check up on the kids in the youth group, and will make his fountain in his flower shop. He will be called the Horned Knight. In Chapter 6, after Pizza Pants, or Burger Pants, goes to buy flowers for his girlfriend Pizzarina, he will fall into Asgore's fountain and learn how to create his own, doing it right at his workplace in Icy's Pizza. This will will lead to many people falling into this dark world, making everyone know about the existence of dark fountains. He will be called the Pizza Knight. Lastly, Noelle will be our final knight. After people found out about the dark worlds, many fountains will open up, and the one that causes the roaring will be Noelle after seeing her father die. She will try to open up a dark world in the hospital next to her Dragon Blazer game system, trying to find a spell to heal him. This will be the Angel's Heavens that the heroes will have to vanish in order to complete the legend. Noelle will be named the O Holy Knight. The themes of Deltarune tie into escapism and fantasy, and so many characters within Hometown have more than enough reason to want to escape their current life and live a fantasy. So, with all that being said, there just has to be more than one knight.
Okay, yeah. A lot of that theory I really like. My only real issue with that is I think some of the the Pizza Night stuff, I don't really know about how I feel with that happening. But I like the multiple knights theory, absolutely. I think 7, definitely. I don't know if I agree with some of the characters being the knights. Susie being the 4th knight and Kris being number 3, definitely. 1 and 2 I could also see. I just like Asgore, I up in the air. The pizza one I really don't. And then Noelle being a knight at the end there, I do like that theory. So I'd say high possibility because there's way more in that theory I agree with and and could definitely see happening. I'd probably put that above Alvin, or no, in between Alvin and Kris, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will change too much, but some other evidence, and also another point that I forgot to mention. But so for Burger Pants or Pizza Pants being the knight, obviously Icy has a bigger importance role in Deltarune, right?
Yeah.
And also Icy appears in the Cyber Dark World twice, actually, which could be foreshadowing for a future Dark World in the pizzeria.
Maybe.
And also, something from Cammy's interpretation and his theory is that he believes in the weird route. That instead of Noelle being the final knight, it will instead be Gaster in the bunker. So I don't know if that changes your possibility or not.
I think maybe Gaster being a knight I like a lot more. Yeah. But
it'll be the weird route version.
The weird route version? Okay.
The final knight will be Gaster.
That goes hard, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna put that where it is. But there's a lot there I do like, and I could definitely see happening. So yeah.
Okay.
And also, I think just looking at this, let's move T and Gaster. Switch them in the top.
Okay. All right. So this one is probably the one that you've been thinking about the most. The piss and shit.
Yeah,
theory.
I'm really confused, and the image doesn't really help me either.
Hey, editing FakeyMcFake here. So during this section of the recording, during the piss and shit theory section, we had some technical difficulties with Luke's sort of side of the audio. So I am trying to salvage any sort of audio that I could save from all that. And I'll be providing sort of subtitles for Luke, so he might sound a little wonky in this section, but it will get fixed shortly after, so do not worry. That image is actually from Deltarune, that little sprite of a toilet.
Oh, that's what that is?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be real honest, I thought it was an egg.
Oh. All right, so Piss and Shit Theory by Wendy Doodles.
What a name.
So, in Undertale, it was established that monsters have different food than humans. It doesn't spoil and is made of magic, for the magic made beings of monsters. However, in Undertale, there was a clear difference between human and monster bathrooms. Since monsters' food is made of magic, it would mean they would have no need for a toilet. And every reference to a monster bathroom is about a shower or a bathtub. So it's more likely that a monster bathroom is literally a bathroom, a room that has a bath in it. Papyrus even asked Friss what a toilet is. But the strangest thing is that in Deltarune's world, toilets are normal for both humans and monsters. The Dreamer House has a toilet in it, and a giant toilet appears in the Cyber City Dark World, meaning that toilets are a thing searched up by monsters. It wouldn't make sense for a town full of monsters to need to look up toilets if it was the exact same in Undertale. We also know that monsters in Deltarune can't use magic. This is because in Undertale, Toriel uses fire magic for her pies, and thus her oven is clean. While in Deltarune, Toriel's oven is dirty with batter because she can't use magic. So, if Deltarune's monsters don't have magic in the light world and look up toilets and have toilets, this means that the monsters in Deltarune would eat regular food and thus would have to shit and piss.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
What do you mean? It's a lot of compelling evidence.
Read that one again.
The entire thing?
The beginning. Just read the beginning again.
Alright, so in Undertale,
a few moments later.
This is such a weird detail. A strange detail that will be included. I hate that this makes sense. I don't really understand what the point of this detail is, and that's kind of my issue with the theory, because like it makes sense, but again, why is it here? What is the point of that detail? So that's kind of why I'm like struggling here.
So where would you put it if you had to say?
All the way at the bottom of some possibility.
All right, next we have the time loop theory.
I feel like I do remember vaguely hearing about this one from you.
Yeah, so this is the last theory by Jar Jar J. He's cooking.
They're cooking.
Deltarune's big theme that it consistently hammers home is that your choices don't matter. We also know from Toby Fox in the Q&A section of Deltarune that this game will only have one ending. However, we know that our choices do matter. We're able to enact a weird route within the game, a route that would have effects in the future and that will surely change the ending of it. But one thought that explains everything is that Deltarune is stuck in a time loop. The ending of the game will showcase the repeat of the start, thus giving us the one ending and fitting into the theme of our choices not mattering. It's likely that the angel will reset the game right before the heroes are able to banish its heaven, right before the roaring causes too much damage. Gaster, being this game master across time and space, would have knowledge of each different time loop of Deltarune, and is what he most likely told Jevil and Spamton that they were stuck into a time loop, resulting in them going insane. Jevil in response said, "I can do anything," and treated everything like a game. It didn't matter, it was going to be reset anyway. Spamton in response tried to gain power enough to break free from the time loop and become more powerful enough to cut his strings of this time loop. This would also explain why the shadow crystals show weird images in the light world, like Kris's hand disappearing and showing Susie glaring at Kris. This is because it shows previous loops of Deltarune. Showing Kris's hands disappearing is when the time loop is being reset, and Susie glaring is likely during the time when Susie bullied Kris before Chapter 2, which ties into why the main theme of Deltarune is called Don't Forget. The song describes a promise that the heroes made to each other before a reset, to not forget about the memories that they have and the bonds they made in their very soul, that one day they'll meet again and try to banish the angels' heaven.
I like the time loop theory, and I think that one thing I thought of is maybe Sans left Deltarune because he knew about the time loop thing. Like in the Sans is not from Undertale, and he went to Undertale because he didn't want to get like erased or anything. There's a lot of weight to the time loop theory. I don't want to put another thing in high possibility, but like feel like it kind of does have a high possibility.
We have so many.
I know.
All right, but where would you put it in the high possibility tier?
We can put right there.
In between Alvin and Ralsei Vessel?
Yeah, why not?
All right, so we are on to our final theory. And guess what, Luke? This one has a little twist.
Okay.
Because guess what? This theory is made by me.
I had a feeling. As soon as you said twist, I was like, I guarantee it's made by you.
This
automatically never had a chance.
No. So this is the Layers of Darkness theory.
Okay.
By me, inspired by Fruity Shade's Layers of Fiction theory.
Okay.
And this is one that I presented in my big Deltarune video. So if you haven't seen that, maybe go check it out. But anyway, how did Gaster shatter across time and space? And where is Des? These are two biggest questions that the Deltarune community wants answered. Well, what if I told you that I may have found those answers that we've been looking for? We know that Gaster's entry 17 was about a dark world, with various lines representing darkness growing, not to mention the sound bite in the background is the same one used when using the phone inside of the dark world. This sound is not only used just to represent Gaster, but also dark worlds in general. From what we know about dark worlds, every single time you enter it, you fall. We know one of the Gaster followers, that Gaster had fallen into his creation. This creation likely being the reason behind why he shattered across time and space. But the core wasn't the only thing that Gaster had created, because we also know now in hindsight that he also created a dark fountain. But I probably know what you're saying. If Gaster broke into time and space from a dark fountain, how come Kris and Susie doesn't do the same thing when they go into a dark fountain? Well, my answer is this special page from Spamton Sweepstakes depicting a chair, and once clicked, the chair goes dark and starts distorting. The text on top of the page says, "What if it could get darker than dark?" This is trying to tell us the existence of a layer darker than just a standard dark world. But do we see anything that has any evidence that points to this? Why, yes, we do. We see Birdly in Chapter 2 attempt to open a dark fountain inside of a dark world. It's quickly brushed off by everyone because of the roaring and the warning that Ralsei gives, but this shows to us that creating a dark world inside of a dark world is possible. And since
that is true.
We know that dark worlds are representative of fiction and bringing objects to life based upon whatever lies in the room. What would happen if you create a dark world inside of another dark world? The fountain would obviously have to give life to objects inside of the dark world. If you keep creating a dark world inside a dark world, the more distorted objects the darkness will become. Just like the chair from the Spamton sweepstakes, you too will eventually become distorted when diving deeper and deeper into the darkness, maybe even scattering across time and space just like a certain
Gaster?
scientist.
Yeah.
And eventually, if you go so deep into a layer of darkness or fiction, you might just loop around into the non-fiction of reality. This is why Gaster is able to communicate with us, the player in the game of Deltarune, with the Goner Maker sequence, and can also communicate with us using the real-world Twitter.com. Gaster, in his experiments, kept on creating dark worlds and dark fountains within more dark worlds, and eventually fell into one that was so deep in the dark that it shattered him across time and space.
Wow.
This would also explain why Gaster is able to interact with darkness without needing to be inside of that dark world. He's so deep within the dark that he can interact with any darkner he chooses. Finally, this explains why Des has gone missing, likely falling into a dark world, a darker dark world inside the bunker. We already know that Kris is scared of the bunker, but it plays that entry 17 soundbite, showcasing not only that Gaster is here, but also a dark world, a deeper dark world. So perhaps Kris went into the bunker with Des, and Des fell into this deeper dark world, finding herself trapped inside. A layer not as deep as Gaster to go into the non-fiction of reality, but deep enough to be trapped within the game's code. I believe that Des is this weird statement in the line of code, talking about her not being able to see or hear anything, only the slight scratching. And since she's so deep in the layer of dark, allows her to briefly talk through Spamton's distorted speech in Spamton's shop. Kris, likely horrified by this bunker encounter, never wanted to go back, but still needs to find a way to find her. And eventually, we will have to explore that deeper layer of darkness.
Yeah, I fuck with that theory heavy.
Let's
I'm not even gonna
go.
lie. Well, I thought that they explained how Gaster got, like...
No, we don't have an official really confirmation.
Okay, because I thought it was he fell into his own creation. Oh
Yes.
yeah, wait, his own creation could have been like the fountains.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I would put that in high possibility. Honestly, there's a lot there, like the whole like fountains in the dark world and like doing all that, and like how we're gonna explore that later is almost like canon level to me.
Like, I haven't seen really anybody talk about it,
No.
but like literally, Birdly like tries to open
Yeah.
a dark
No,
world
he
in
does.
a dark world.
Yeah, I'd put that pretty high up actually. In between Alvin and Seven Knights.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, no, yeah, good ass theory.
Thank you. All right, so this is Luke's tier list.
Yeah, I honestly didn't think I'd have so many in the high and some possibility there.
Some surprised me.
Yeah?
Honestly. You know, this is what a sort of person outside of the community sort of thinks of the first impressions when they hear these theories. Have this be a brain rot tester, guys. If some things that you absolutely believe in are never had a chance, and some things that you believe never had a chance are in canon, maybe take another look at it. I don't know. With that being said, let me show you what I did, what my tier list was. So this is mine.
Our canon pretty
similar?
I'm kind of surprised chess is so low.
Okay, so
And like Megalovania being in canon, I'm not gonna argue that.
but you're not gonna argue with piss and shit.
The piss and shit one, my main takeaway is that why is that in there? Like, what is like the significance?
I think the significance with piss and shit theory is to sort of help reinforce the fact that the monsters aren't made of magic, which is different from Undertale. And that's why I believe it's canon.
Okay, and like that's fair.
And the reason why chess is so low for
I'm
me
confused on why that's so low.
is because chess theory, you know, I do like the idea of it. I do think it's fun. But, you know, we have king, we have queen, and if chess theory is correct, then shouldn't the next one be called rook? But we know we have Mike and Tenna, no rook. And also, I think Toby doesn't really have a sort of set in stone plan for each and every antagonist being a chessboard piece.
Okay.
Because, you know, the ending of Deltarune is a fever dream that he had. So it wouldn't really make sense to have a like coursed plan theme throughout all of it unless that's why I put in some possibility.
Okay.
There's some things, but I don't think it's like super high up there.
All right. Why is Ralsei Vessel so low?
Or Ralsei Vessel?
Yeah.
I don't totally vibe with it. I do think it has some evidence. I do think it's compelling, but I don't know. I feel like Ralsei is something more more than just the vessel. And
okay.
I feel like the vessel has a different purpose instead of just being just Ralsei.
Yeah.
I feel like the vessel will sort of be this like discarded item that we find, and that will lead to us sort of breaking the connection with Kris.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting take. What about the Asriel Dust and never had a chance? I don't like the prank part. I don't think that's real, but like Asriel Dust and Ralsei, like I gotta hear your take on why.
Okay, so since you haven't been in Deltarune community, I will let you know that Jaru's theories are controversial.
Really?
Because many people like don't believe it.
Oh, because I feel like I was riding pretty hard on.
Yeah, no, I think Jaru makes some good evidence, and I think he is compelling. But the Asriel Dust thing, like, that means that Ralsei would be a item with dead Asriel Dust on it. But we know like Asriel's in college. I think is just a lot more simpler than what is being presented. I think it's just Asriel is a way to college, and Ralsei is some other object. Like, obviously in relation to Asriel, because they look like, you know, the same, but not literally Asriel. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. That's.
And I like how you put Rouxls Knight as like low possibility when like that was like probably the most stupidest theory I put on here.
That one was pretty stupid.
The big thing about Rouxls Knight is he's a darkner. We know so
he
far. He
can't be a non-darkner.
Well, we know that only lighteners can create fountains.
Oh, yeah, duh.
So.
Okay, yeah, I'd put that actually in note. Never had a chance. I'd move
you want to move
down.
that?
Yeah.
Move that down? Okay.
Second voice, why is that so low?
Second voice is just because I feel like the second voice is just Kris. Because that sort of Japanese sort of text can sort of relate to Kris. It's not just a defining feature of Chara. It's just a general way that people, you know, kind of similar to Chara would talk. And obviously Kris might be the Chara version of Deltarune. So I feel like Kris interrupting the sequence at the end makes sense, especially since we then play as Kris.
Okay.
And Oberon Smog, another Jaru theory. I do like the concept. I do think it's fun.
Yeah.
But I do think it has a low chance. Like
I mean, and that's what,
bringing back Gerson to be like this knight. But I do think it's fun, and we got some cool art and stuff out of that.
Okay, I'm trying to see if on any of your other, I guess on why do you think Sans is not Undertale is some possibility.
Some possibility, because I feel like in Deltarune with Sans, it has a chance of being the same person, but it's more so of just like the exact means of how, and also the idea that Undertale and Deltarune are sort of set up to be their sort of separate thing. So I don't think there will be sort of like a direct continuation from Deltarune to Undertale. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I want to move Asriel Dust a little lower because I feel like all the way in high possibility. Now I'm thinking about it, that is a little too high.
Okay.
I want to put it in some possibility.
Okay, where exactly?
Right there.
I was also kind of confused why you put Megalovania so it never had a chance for Susie and Shab.
I just don't think that's happening.
Why not?
It's just, I don't think it will. Think that's gonna be where we get it. I really just don't think so. I don't really have more of an answer than that. I just don't see that happening. Like, I guess like I can see the argument for it, but I just don't agree.
I mean, I think like Megalovania has like a strong chance to be in the game.
I agree. I just don't think it's them.
I mean, I think it could fit a lot of different characters because, you know, like I said in the theory,
Rouxls Knight.
It can fit Rouxls. But like I said in the theory, like Megalovania in the past has already been fitted for multiple characters. That's just not just Sans.
I guess, but like.
So, and Toby obviously will include Megalovania. I think that's basically canon.
Yeah, that it'll be here in some form.
There's no reason not to.
Yeah.
Like Deltarune existed before Undertale, and Toby composed Megalovania before Undertale. So obviously, wouldn't Deltarune be like the big game that Megalovania takes place in?
I guess. Wait. Where do you have Naked Ralsei?
Some possibility.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. I mean, okay. I can see your argument.
Yeah.
Like it's all the way at the bottom of some possibility. So.
I mean, we just got like scrap content that showed Ralsei without the glasses.
Yeah.
So I feel like he could take the glasses off next, or not scrap content. Sorry, early sketches.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Right. Any other thing?
No, not really.
I'm glad you like Woody theory though, because
Woody theory is fire.
I love Woody theory.
That's like my favorite theory on here. Yeah, I really like the Woody theory.
It's just fun.
That's a great. Like, it's fun. It's a great theory. It's insane. It's batshit. I love it.
All right, so there you go. Luke updated his tier list. So with knowing all that context, here's where he lies. This tier list will be public. So if you want to make your own tier list out of these, feel free. Go ahead. You can send to me on Twitter. I have a Twitter, by the way, so you should go follow that. But yeah, there you go. We're excited for Deltarune. It's gonna be basically right around the corner by the time this video releases. So
oh yeah, Delta June.
So everyone say happy birthday to Luke, because it's gonna be his birthday right around the release of Deltarune. So
yeah, the day before. Thank you, everyone.
Say happy birthday.
And finally, go check out all the theories that we ranked in this video, because all I did was give a short summary. It wasn't the full thing. So show some support and go down a trip of memory lane one last time. Those will all be linked in the description.
And Luke, thank you for joining me.
Of course. Thank you for having me on again.
It was fun seeing
Always
your
a pleasure.
interpretations. And maybe after chapter 3 and 4, maybe we'll have to do this again for those new theories.
I'm down. Honestly, I'm so down. This was so much fun.
So yeah, have a good one, everyone. Adios and bye-bye.
Goodbye.